Hello, welcome back to my channel, and episode 3 of the adventures with the lathe and the DRO. So last time we sorted out the cross slide, worked out how we're going to do it, fitted the magnetic scale. I still need to work out how I'm going to mount the sensor for the scale, but before we get to that, I want to do the main one, the Z-axis. Get the scale mounted on there so I know what I'm going to be doing here and how it's all going to be mounted. I mentioned last time that I wanted to put a sort of this 3D printed template, use that to position some mounting bosses that will then be used to mount the scale to, and hopefully eliminate some of the need for constant adjustment to get everything lined up. So I've done a little drawing of the sort of layout, and I'll show that to you now. Right, so this is a drawing of the rough sort of layout. This bit here, that is our mounting guide. I've put a little aluminium insert in there. The idea is I'll make these bosses and then screw them in from the back with a 5mm cap screw, just so that they're mounted to this, and then I can fit this to the lathe bed, and hopefully that'll be consistent. So that's what that is. This is the actual side profile of the glass scale, and then that is the mounting boss side profile. And then there's a little gap here where I intend to have the epoxy. So this is the sort of rough plan, and we're just going to have to see how it goes. But I've got some material. There's some little bits of aluminium tooling plate. It's not the best material in the world, but it's strong enough for this application. It's probably better, to be honest, because it's more thermally stable than most aluminiums. So it is designed for fixturing and that kind of thing. So I've got a fair bit of this stuff that I got, a big chunk of the stuff that was going to get scrapped off, so I nabbed it. But yeah, so I'm going to machine up these bosses, and I've already put the aluminium insert into this 3D printed part. So the basic concept is that's your bed there, so that'll fit on the bed, and then once these are machined, bolted onto that, held into position, bit of epoxy, hopefully let it set, and hopefully doesn't move, and then once it's set I can drill and tap into the bed to clamp it in place with some M5 screws, and then I should have a good nice parallel location point for the glass scale. So I think next thing we'll go and machine these little buggers and see how they come out. Right, so I made this little guy, pair of these little guys, one of which I've actually already installed in my little guide. I've sanded this bit over here, so hopefully we can get the epoxy to adhere quite well there. And I think all I need to do now is get a bit of epoxy onto that and get some of it over here, and then the idea is that that will fit onto there. I'll clamp that down, and hopefully That'll hold it in place well, and end result, it'll be well positioned. Yeah, this is also going to be a good little test of our a little bit of software called Supertone Clear that I've been using to clean up audio, because as you can probably hear, I've got some noise happening in the background, but we'll see how that goes. In the edit, you might, hey, if I'm lucky, you won't hear any of it. But meantime, I'm going to mix up some epoxy. I'm using this super steel, I don't know, super steel stuff. I figured better off, oh, this is not opening. Right. Gonna have to open it at the back, I think. I've had it for a while. Yeah. I might be checking it out after this job. Does this one open? Yeah. Just like all epoxies, it's a 50-50 mix. Obviously, you've got to keep going until it's mixed very properly. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I think we'll apply some to the bed of the lathe. As well as the boss. It doesn't need to be that tidy. And then hopefully there's enough on there, maybe a little bit more at the top. And then hopefully if I put a clamp on that, and then I'll put something on here just to weight it down. Just a big lump of metal of some kind. And that actually looks pretty good, I think. Yeah, as I thought, getting a bit of run down the front. I had a feeling that might happen. I'm not too bothered about what it looks like because it is at the back of the lathe, so I'm more concerned about it being well stuck. You'll probably check the drying time. I'll have to Google it. Right, so they're saying 5 minutes to cure and then 10 minutes to fully harden. Sounds a bit optimistic to me, but that would be nice. Try not to mess around with it, I think. Gonna leave that, see what happens. We'll come back in a little while and see if it's set. Okay, so we're going to change to JB Weld, I think, because I'm not sure about that other epoxy. It's I feel like it should have set by now, and it's firm but still a bit softer than I would like. I don't know if it might have been past its best. So I'm going to do the other one. I'm going to do the other one some JB Weld, and then we'll see how quickly this sets. Because there's a definite possibility I might end up redoing the other one. So we'll try it with the JB Weld and see. If the other one hasn't set properly by the time this JB Weld is cured. I'm just going to see if it comes off. Might just leave it if I can't pull it off, but I'll have a go. I think the JB weld is a bit thicker as well, which helps prevent it from oozing and dripping. Anyway, we'll find out soon enough, I think. Incidentally, I had to take another millimeter off this block. I'm sure that's just an issue with variation in the casting, because we're mounting to a cast surface, which is the whole point of this thing in the first place. Right, moment of truth. Feel like we could use a little more on there. Actually, I think we're okay. So we'll clamp that one. Put our weight on here again. And we'll just leave that for a bit. This isn't running anywhere near as much. Yeah, that looks better, I think. Should have gone with the JB weld from the start. I'll just leave that and see what happens. Okay, so back the next morning. And this is probably set now, so I think let's see how this came out. So we'll remove that. We'll remove the screw and the clamp. Right. I think that looks okay. Yeah, it's stuck on. Happy with that. So there's two counterbore holes. These are for M5 cap screws to mount this, so that, remember, the epoxy's really just there to position it and to hold it in place while I'm drilling it and to set the spacing effectively. And then in the center you've got the M5 screw for the mounting the glass scale. So we may as well just check and see, make sure that the scale is actually going to fit there. We'll try and line this up. I'm going to line it up that side first. Yeah, that looks bang on, to be honest. So we've got our vertical adjustment in the slot in the glass scale housing. There's quite a bit of adjustment on that. And there's a little bit of horizontal adjustment because the slots are 6 millimeters and the screws are 5 millimeters. So they do, to be fair, those M5 holes look bang on center to the slots, which is kind of what I was aiming for. We may still have to do some adjustment of the position of the scale, purely because we're locating on this part here, which is separate to this main section. So it's just screwed in from the end. I have no idea how precise the fit is. It doesn't feel like it's perfectly aligned to the edges, so who knows. So there may still be some adjustment to do, but hopefully we minimize it by positioning these as accurately as possible to the slideway on top. So I don't know, we'll find out. Next thing, I think I'm going to drill some holes, get them tapped. I've left these holes in the counterbores, I've left them at 4.2 mil. So that should give me a nice guide for the drill into the cast iron bed, and then I'll open them up to clearance for 5 once I've drilled into the bed, and then tap the bed through them. So should help keep everything nice and square. And then with 2 M5 screws holding that in place on each of these blocks, I think we should be pretty solid. So yeah, let's do that. All right, well, that's through. Just about nearly through. Yep. So we're in. Looking pretty good, that. Probably better off drilling the aluminium to 5 before we carry on. You can feel when it's because you've got that sort of 1.5 mil of epoxy there. You can feel when you get through the aluminium and you're into the epoxy, so you don't end up drilling too far. See, my drilling wandered a little bit off course there, but it doesn't matter. Oh, that's pretty good, that. Tap went through easy. Yeah, not quite straight. This isn't exactly critical. All right, now we just need a couple of cap screws. I have a feeling I'm running a bit low on M5 caps. Might have to nip out to my favourite supplier. Nuts of Chorley, they're called. And they supply any quantity, but their prices are reasonable. And they even carry Imperial stuff. So, and they're literally 5-minute drive away from where I live. So I'm not going to tighten these up too tight because this epoxy hasn't been curing for all that long. It's only been in there for 24 hours. So I don't want to put stress on the epoxy and have it squish. Let's just nip it up and see how that looks. Feel like that's going to be pretty damn solid. Got a nice clean M5 thread in the center. So we'll do the other one and we'll come back and see if we can get the trial fit on the glass scale. See you in a minute. Okay, so these have been tapped now. You may have noticed I didn't use any lubricant, and that's because I didn't really want to, normally I use a bit of WD-40, but I just didn't want anything that could interfere with the curing process of the epoxy. So because it's only been 24 hours, it's not fully cured. I just didn't want to spray any WD-40 in there. And to be fair, when it comes to cast iron, it's fairly easy to tap, even without a lubricant. So it's pretty safe. Now, I have a feeling I might have to do a bit of cutting on these to get them to fit correctly, but we're just going to do a little test and see. Probably have to cut these. Yeah, they're still too long, but let's just get an idea of if it's all going to go into place. I'll just cut these down, which is just proof of concept. Right, so that does fit, and that gives us quite a lot of room to jiggle up and down as we need to, and the reader head is clear of this section of the casting, which was where I was concerned there might be some interference, but it's only just clear. It's only about 1 millimeter there, but it's a machined face, so if it clears a mill here, it'll clear a mill everywhere. But that's looking pretty good. My plan was for it to be roughly in the center of its slot, and then that should give me enough space for this cover Then mount over it like that. Keep all the muck out, and at the same time give me pretty good access to the reader head, which obviously needs to be able to slide along. Oh, that's a really long cable. I don't know if this is the correct way around yet, but we'll find out. So next thing to do, cut down these bolts. I'll need to drill some holes in this cover plate. And also, I need to make sure that there's nothing interfering on this side where the motor and the motor mount and all of that goes. I need to make sure that the cables are all clear. I don't think I'll have a problem. This probably could have been a little shorter, but I was erring on the side of caution. I do need... We'll see how it works. Next thing, we'll get these screws cut off a bit shorter, get this actually mounted into position, drill some holes in this cover, start working out what we need to drill and tap to fit it, and try and get the whole scale mounted. And then once the whole scale's mounted, we can move on to actually connecting it to the relevant axes. Okay, so I took this off. Instead of cutting the bolts off, I ended up just drilling further into the bed and tapping the hole into the cast iron of the bed. So I feel like that's actually going to be better, because it'll be better for locking these aluminium blocks in place, because the thread goes through the block and the bed. So I think it's going to be pretty solid. So yeah, and I've now mounted it securely. It feels pretty good. I did run a clock over it. I would have filmed that, but unfortunately I couldn't really find a way to get the camera in a position that it would be, you'd be able to see that. So, but I did run a clock over it. I've had to shim that corner here. I've put roughly 0.2 millimeters of Coke can, slices of Coke can underneath there, so two layers. And now we're at 0 here, we're at 0 on this side, and we're at about plus 0.05 in the middle. So it's got a little bit of a bow to it. I think that's because these end blocks aren't actually all that well machined. They're not all that flat. And and whether they sit square on the end depends on how squarely they cut the this extrusion. So to be honest, they're not the most precise things. As long as the scale is precise, that's the main thing, I suppose. And these reader heads can tolerate a fair bit of self-adjustment, really. So it should be fine like that. I think 0.05 here and then 0 at each end. So I'm happy with that. That all seems to be working really well. I've got vertical adjustment to adjust the tilt because these holes are slotted. I've got them roughly in the center of the slot at the moment, which is the way I designed this to go on. So I think the next thing I need to do before I get too carried away getting this perfectly aligned, when it's probably going to have to come off again, I think the next thing to do is to get the cover and sort out the mountings for that. So the cover hasn't been drilled yet, so I need to drill that, and I need to then work out how I'm going to what I might actually do, I might lift this by about 2 mil to create clearance, and then just rest the cover on it once I've drilled it, drill into the bed, and then I know if I'm roughly in the center of the slots on either end, I'll have about 2 mil of clearance. Not that it matters really. I don't suppose it really matters if the cover's touching the scale or not. It's just there really to keep the muck off. So yeah, but anyway, that's the next part of the process, I think. So we'll get on with that. Okay, so cover fits. There's enough clearance here for the thingy to slide around. Gonna have to find a way of sticking this cable somewhere where it's out of the way. I can tell that's going to be something to think about. It got a bit weird there at one point when I was trying to screw the cover on and forgot I hadn't tapped these holes yet. Also, it's not sitting very square. There seems to be a fair bit of variation in the depth of the casting, because over on this side it's riding up against the screws that are holding the glass scale in place, where it is on that side it's not. So the screws are sticking out a bit, so I'll sort out some lower profile screws for that. I might just use button heads, and then that'll probably solve that problem, because they have a lower profile. But other than that, everything looks okay. It all fits. I feel like we're on the right track here. I haven't really checked where we need to mount. I mean, this is our area where I can put the bracket, so I think we'll probably aim for the reader head over here, which will mean when we're all the way on the other side, it's not getting into the area occupied by the motor, because we're traveling all the way to here. So I think rather than having the reader head central, we'll shift it over this way as much as possible, and that'll probably be better, because then we don't have the wires going into this area. But I think I'll sort this out when I get some button heads, and next thing I think we'll start working on bracketry. So this reader head is quite awkward to get to. I'll need something underneath here that comes out, and then something that comes down to meet it, and then I think we'll be okay. So yeah, I think that's about it for this episode. I'll see you in the next one, but some good solid progress. Thank you very much for watching.